Hi everyone and welcome back to another Mixed Media Tuesday, and today I'm working on the first page of my Mixed Media paper journal. I will be playing with rice paper in the beginning, and this is one of the rice papers from my latest collection, Secret Diary, that I have used a part of it in another journal, but I'm going to show you how you can use the other part. So here you see I'm just going to use some water and draw wherever I want to tear off that rice paper. This is going to ensure that as I tear off the rice paper, I get some fibers and a distressed look on the edges. This is going to help that edge blend better into my page, and at the same time it's not going to give me harsh lines. Of course, you don't want to throw away the other part, just leave it aside for another page. Now for sticking everything down, I will go with my rice paper glue. Apply a good amount of rice paper glue on top of your page, stick the rice paper on top and then cover it up with the same glue. This is going to seal down the rice paper, and also make sure that you don't transfer too much water. If you noticed, I did start with a completely dry brush. Now after you do the whole process of sticking the rice paper, make sure that you wash your brush or keep a jar full of water just next to you so you can dip the brush in until you go to the sink and wash it. It really washes off quickly and easily because the rice paper glue is actually water-based. So I'm going to bring in my heat gun, make sure that this layer is completely dry, and I will also use my scissors to chop off any excess. Now for the white space, I'm going to use Ivory color, and I chose this color because it is already on my rice paper, so everything is going to blend nicely. I'm going over the blank space and a little bit over those edges just to disguise them and blend them in. You will see that it works beautifully, and just because we had those torn edges, it makes the job really easy. Of course, at this stage you can definitely go and add even more colors of acrylic paint, but for what I have in my mind today, I'm going for a more subtle look on my background. That's why I started with Ivory as the first layer. Now I'm going to do some stenciling, and I'm bringing in one of the stencils that I designed about a year ago or maybe a couple of years ago from my Great Happiness with Stamperia signature collection. And this time I'm going to bring in a new product by Stamperia. This is Sandy Paste. As you can see, it's the first time I'm using this product and I wanted to give it a go along with you. This is a paste that is going to give you loads and loads of texture. I believe it has sand inside, it is really rough, and you will see that you don't get the perfect impression through stencils. However, it is going to give a great texture. So you want to use with this paste a stencil that is has big openings and not a very delicate one. So I'm going to apply the paste in a couple of areas on my background. Always scrape off the stencil, the excess, and put it back in the jar. Now for this paste, since it is so thick and it has grain inside, I will make sure to scrape off any excess from my stencil, put it back in the jar. I will also use some paper towel to clean it off, and then I will go to the sink to rinse. Now again, this is the first time I'm using this paste, so I need to try things. Here I'm just trying to dry it with my heat gun. I found out that it doesn't bubble on me at all, and it dries with a heat gun, so it is completely safe to do that. Now there are many ways to bring that texture into life. If you want, you can spray directly on your page. However, I'm going with a more controlled approach. I just swiped a little bit of coffee dye ink on my glass mat. I'm going to apply some water, and then with the brush I will darken up some areas. This is a foolproof technique. Just let that ink go all over the place, let it drop. You can do that with watercolors if you like, and make sure that this layer is completely dry before we move on to the next one. For the next layer, I want to darken up the edges and create kind of a frame. I always find that this technique brings everything together somehow and it makes the project look more finished. So here I'm using again coffee dye ink and I'm blending it in only on the edges. Now let's work on the focal points. For that I'm using the Secret Diary 12 by 12 paper pad and I'm going to cut out the bird and I want to use a Polaroid where I can place the bird on top. So this is one where you can definitely cut out, but there is another one in the paper pad that is slightly bigger and wider. So that's the one that I'm going with. I am going to cut out the inside and remove it from the Polaroid, and I will explain why I'm doing that in a bit. Keep in mind, however, that if you don't like fuzzy cutting, you can definitely find a Polaroid frame as well as the bird in the ephemera pack. Now here notice that the background from the Polaroid was very similar to what I have already. So it didn't provide any contrast. That's why I'm going with another pattern paper for the background, which is whiter, and it is going to bring the contrast that I'm going for. And I'm going to put my focal point together, so I'm going to stick the Polaroid frame on top of my background. Notice that for that I'm using a white liquid glue, and this is actually the rice paper glue. I find that it works just like matte medium, so I use it to seal the paper on top as well, and it's going to dry completely matte. You won't see any shine at all. I'm going to put the bird on top as well, stick it down again and cover it up, and I make sure that I cover all the parts of that focal point that I'm putting together, because I'm going to use my big brush markers to add shadows and highlights later on. For that technique I need to make sure that I have a non-porous surface. You see that it looks quite milky at the moment? Don't worry at all, this glue dries completely clear. Also from the same paper pad I cut out a few of those leaves and I'm going to put everything together now. And I will also use my scissors to separate it from the excess paper that I have for the background. I do have a couple of more leaves that I want to stick down. Again with the same glue, always covering up whatever I have there with that glue to make sure that everything is non-porous. And once I'm ready, I can stick this on top of my project. Now one of my old-time favorite techniques that I used to do back in the day was to use my big brush markers to add some highlights or to emphasize some shadows. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm using my set of Faber-Castell big brush markers, or Pitt markers as they are called. This is an expensive marker. You can definitely omit this step and leave it as it is, or you can use your watercolors, your pencils, or any other medium that you may have. Now what I'm doing is adding a little bit of that color and blending it with my finger. This is my favorite technique. There are so many other ways that you can do it, but that's how I like it. So for this smudging technique to work, you need to make sure that this is a non-porous surface underneath. Otherwise, the ink of the marker is going to soak into the paper and you won't be able to blend it out. Notice that I always work with markers that are very close or slightly darker than what I have on my focal point, and this way I brighten up the colors of the image that I already have and bring it more to life. And depending on the area that I want to add more color to, I can use any of the two nibs. So here for the branch, for example, I went with a fine tip. I'm also going to draw some lines. I'm going to use a grey marker to add some shadows along the Polaroid frame to help it pop even more from the background. These markers are really so fun to play with and they bring any cutout paper into life. However, when I use them, I get a lot of comments from people that they cannot find them or that they are quite expensive. So lately I tend to avoid them. However, I would love to read your thoughts in the comments. So in any case, I'm going to show you another way that you can do the shadows. You see, I did a little bit of shadowing with those markers, but there are many alternative ways. So for example, just use your dye inks with a very stiff brush and go all around to add the shadow. So there are always ways to do something similar for a very close look to what I'm doing. Now the next step is to use a black marker, and this is a very fine tip marker. I'm going to sketch some lines along the cutout pieces. This is going to give them some definition and help them pop more. And I also used a white gel pen to add some highlights here and there, which I forgot to turn the camera on. So let's move on to the next step of adding a quote. For that I used a set of alphabet dies. Don't ask me where I got them, I have them in my stash forever. Probably they are from my favorite things, if I'm not mistaken. And I cut out the word explore from black cardstock and I'm just going to stick it along the edge. And of course you can definitely use alphabet stamps for this, and it would give you the same look and feel as the cutout letters. Here I'm using my white gel pen to add some highlights on the letters. I'm adding black on the very far edge of the page. Again, darkening up the edges, making sure that it looks like a frame. And the page is pretty much ready. I'm just doing the finishing touches and I can go with those forever, especially when I enjoy playing with a page like in this case. Final touch, I'm going to add some splatters, white splatters. For that I'm using white calligraphy ink. I have a jar here by Liquitex and I'm using a very fine brush, as you can see. This helps me control somehow the splatters. And I can call my project done. You can see some close-up photos here where you can see the details better. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired. Links to everything can be found down below in the description. Thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you all next time.